Blackwood Manor, a name whispered in hushed tones, a place shunned by locals. It stood on a windswept moor, a monument to decay. Its stone walls, once proud, were now crumbling. The windows, like vacant eyes, stared out blindly. The roof sagged, burdened by unseen weights. A shiver ran down my spine as I approached. What secrets did this house hold? Built in the 17th century, Blackwood Manor had a long, troubled history. It was once home to the Blackwood family, wealthy landowners shrouded in rumour. Stories circulated in the nearby village, tales of sudden deaths, disappearances and madness. The Blackwoods were said to be cursed, and each generation met with tragedy. The villagers believed the manor was haunted, a prison for the Blackwood's sins. Now only whispers remained. Despite its sinister reputation, Blackwood Manor attracted curiosity seekers. They came to experience the chill, to hear the whispers, to see the shadows. Few stayed long. They told of cold spots, disembodied voices, and a feeling of being watched. Objects moved, doors slammed shut, footsteps echoed in the dead of night. Blackwood Manor was not a place for the faint of heart. One night I sat alone in the library, a fire crackling in the hearth. The room was bathed in a warm golden glow, casting long shadows that danced on the walls. The scent of old books and burning wood filled the air, creating an atmosphere of both comfort and mystery. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. It was a fierce, relentless wind, as if nature itself was trying to break into the sanctuary of the library. The trees outside swayed violently, their branches scraping against the glass like skeletal fingers. A sudden noise made me jump. It was a sharp, unexpected sound that echoed through the silent room. My heart raced as I looked around, trying to pinpoint the source of the disturbance. The shadows seemed to grow darker, more menacing. A book had fallen from a shelf. I picked it up, my hands trembling slightly. The cover was old and worn, the title barely legible. As I held it, I felt a strange chill run down my spine, as if the book itself was alive with some hidden energy. It was a diary, its pages filled with spidery writing. I began to read, the words drawing me in with their eerie allure. The handwriting was delicate yet hurried, as if the author had been in a state of great distress. The words spoke of fear, of a presence in the house. They told of strange occurrences, of whispers in the night and shadows that moved on their own. The author described a growing sense of dread, a feeling that something was always watching, a presence that would not rest. The diary ended abruptly, the final entry smeared and almost unreadable. I closed the book, my mind racing with questions. What had happened to the author? And was the presence they wrote about still here, lurking in the shadows of the night? The diary belonged to Amelia Blackwood, a young woman who lived in the manor a century ago. She wrote of strange occurrences, of feeling watched, of hearing voices. She believed the house was haunted. Then the entries took a sinister turn. Amelia wrote of her brother, Edward. He had grown withdrawn, obsessed with the manor's history. He spoke of a family secret, a darkness that stained their bloodline. Section 6. The Portrait's Gaze. In the dimly lit room, shadows danced on the walls, creating an eerie atmosphere. The air was thick with the scent of old books and the faint hint of something else, something unsettling. I turned the page, my heart pounding. Each word seemed to echo in the silence, amplifying the tension that gripped me. The diary was old, its pages yellowed with age, but the emotions it conveyed were as vivid as ever. The next entry was chilling. It spoke of nights filled with whispers and shadows that moved on their own. The manor, once a place of warmth and laughter, had become a prison of fear and dread. Amelia wrote of Edward's change. Her words painted a picture of a man who had once been kind and loving, but who had become a stranger, consumed by dark thoughts and violent tendencies. He had become violent, unhinged. His eyes, once filled with warmth, now burned with a cold, calculating fury. He spoke of visions and voices, of things that no one else could see or hear. He spoke of appeasing the spirits, of making amends for some unknown sin. His ramblings grew more incoherent, more desperate, as if he were trying to hold on to the last shreds of his sanity, of a sacrifice that needed to be made. then silence. Amelia's diary ended abruptly. The final entry was smudged as if written in haste, the ink bleeding into the paper like tears. I looked up, my gaze drawn to a portrait hanging above the fireplace. The room seemed to grow colder, the shadows deeper, as I stared at the face in the painting. It was Edward Blackwood, his eyes cold and calculating. There was a malevolence in his gaze, a sense of something dark and dangerous lurking just beneath the surface. He seemed to be watching me. No matter where I moved, his eyes followed, piercing through the gloom. It was as if he were trying to communicate, to convey a message from beyond the grave. The weight of his stare was almost unbearable, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The portrait's gaze held a story, one that was far from over. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I had to leave. As I made my way out of the library, I noticed something, a dark stain on the wooden floor. Blood. It trailed down the hallway, leading towards the stairs. I followed, my hand gripping the banister for support. The air grew colder, heavy with a palpable sense of dread. The bloodstains led to a locked door at the end of the hallway. The attic. I could hear faint sounds coming from within, scratching, whispering, and then a scream. I threw my weight against the door. It burst open, revealing a small, dusty attic, and there, in the center of the room, stood a figure. The figure turned slowly, almost as if it was aware of being watched. The air was thick with tension, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, echoed ominously in the stillness of the night. It was a woman, her face pale and drawn, as if she had seen horrors beyond imagination. Her clothes were tattered, and she moved with a sense of urgency, yet there was a fragility to her steps, as if she might collapse at any moment. Her eyes were wide with terror, reflecting the moonlight that filtered through the dense canopy above. They darted around, searching for something or someone. The fear in her gaze was palpable, a silent scream that echoed through the night. She was clutching a blood-stained knife, her knuckles white from the grip. The blade glinted menacingly, a stark contrast to the darkness that surrounded us. It was clear that this weapon had been used, and recently. "He made me do it," she whispered, her voice trembling. The words were barely audible, carried away by the wind. There was a desperation in her tone, a plea for understanding, for someone to believe her. "He said it was the only way." She pointed behind me, her hands shaking. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. The forest seemed to close in around us, the shadows growing darker, more oppressive. Standing in the doorway was a man, Edward Blackwood. His presence was commanding, almost suffocating. He stood there unmoving, as if he had been waiting for this moment. The air around him seemed to crackle with a dark energy. His eyes were filled with a cold, malevolent light. He smiled, a slow, sinister smile that sent chills down my spine. It was a smile that promised pain, that revelled in the suffering of others. There was no humanity in those eyes, only darkness. The Blackwood curse was real. The stories, the legends, they were all true. This place, this family, was steeped in darkness, in evil, and now I was caught in its web, unable to escape, and I was its next victim. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. There was no way out, no escape from the fate that awaited me. The truth had been revealed, and it was more terrifying than I could have ever imagined.